I have with me Yehoshua Pinkhes Perelmuth, who has really made a name for himself, but perhaps not as you might know that name. He's written this book, The Bluebird of Happiness. Maybe you'll recognize the name a little better when you see the picture. And of course, I'm talking about Jan Peerce, which I've given you his given name when he was born.
Sure.
When?
June 3rd, 1904.
Where?
New York City.
Parents were Russian immigrants?
Russian Jewish immigrants.
Right. And
came here to seek their fortune.
Did they find it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, America was good to them. And they raised a lovely family with a lot of hardship, a lot of heartache, and a lot of happiness.
Do you describe yourself as a classical singer, or you describe yourself for us? What do you call yourself?
I'm a serious artist who sings everything in the classical field, but I'm also, shall we say, a man who can dabble and did dabble and does dabble in every facet of music. I can sing a popular thing, and not rock and roll, but I used to be a jazz fiddle player, you know.
Really? No, I
had a past.
Really?
Sure, I earned my livelihood that way. And
still play the fiddle?
No, I have no time. But someday I'll buy a fiddle and we'll have chamber music evenings at home. I still have my fiddle, but it's it's standing in the corner. Well, we set it up 40 years ago, and that's where it is. And I believe that every artist who sings or plays must make versatility a part of their lives. Because otherwise, singing or playing one type of music, me personally, can make me crazy. So I like to dabble in everything. So I do opera, I do, of course, since my leg accident, I'm on a sabbatical from the Met. Although I'm beginning to do some. I just did Traviata in Peoria, Illinois, and I'm going back to do a Cavalleria Rusticana in March. Not because of any money or anything, but just the idea that I can do it and still do it at my age.
Right. Okay? Well, now I was going to ask you, at your age, is it normal that the voice begins to give out in some people?
Well, yes, some people it gives out at a very early age.
Yeah.
There are many things to think about. If you take care of the little gift that God gave you and develop a technique and use the voice civilly, use it to a point of not overdoing and not yelling and not screaming, but singing musically and use it as an instrument. Mm-hmm. And if you enjoy good health and live a kind of a moderate existence of peace and quiet, and yet still a member of the world, a member of the organization called people, there's no reason for the voice to go. How do you feel about the acceptance of classical music in this country? It's not widespread. No, but it's growing, and it's on the upbeat.
Why is it not widespread, and why is it in Europe?
Well, they had more exposure of it in Europe than here. Now the school systems are doing a little more than they did in the last 25 years. But if you've got to expose people to good things. It's like food that you eat, certain things that you couldn't stand until you were exposed to it. And little by little you got into it, and you develop a taste for it. Here, people, parents are at fault. Wow. Teachers are at fault. They let the kid play baseball, they let him play all kinds of athletics, and let him try out for the track team. Everything's fine. But music was way back. You take parents and you say, why don't you teach your child a musical instrument? Not to be a professional musician, but to have a knowledge of something good. Mm. And they all leave him alone. He's overworked. He has such a terrible schedule. He goes till 3 o'clock. He's at school, and then he has handball practice, and then he goes out for the hockey team. They got excuses for everything except a little culture. And it's the fault of the parents, and also the fault of people involved in cultural activity. But it's growing. There is more money spent for classical music, and that might mean events, opera, ballet, instruments, sheet music, scores, attendance at ballets and attendance at concerts. More money spent in that than there is on baseball in the United States.
Of course, that's not the best. Baseball, some people feel, is dying as a public sport, but
well, I'm talking about baseball in its heyday, sir.
No, that's a good point to make.
And there's a reason why baseball is dying, and I'm not a great sportsman.
Right.
But the old days of baseball, I think probably maybe, I don't know about football, but maybe football too.
Do you practice every day?
Every day.
What kinds of things? Can you do
Some
something?
scales.
Can we hear your voice? I hate to do an interview with a singer and never hear him sing. Can you just sing?
You never heard me sing. Na. That's a scale.
Yeah, you do that every day.
Every
those kinds
day.
Of things, the exercise.
So you get
Anna
up
Maria Alberghetti says she lets her voice rest for weeks.
if you're tired.
Yeah.
If there's, I know Anna Maria.
Yeah.
She's a very lovely girl.
Yes, she
very
is.
beautiful singer. And if you're tired, or if you came off a big tour and you feel that you worked a lot, and it's good to take a couple of days off. But I can't rest. I must have activity. I must have things going for me. Some people don't talk to people when they have to sing. The day they sing, you can't. They don't talk on the phone. I talk on the phone.
Well, you know, Jan, I have the old Hollywood image of an opera star, of a nervous guy with a thing spraying in his
Yeah.
throat and temperamental and blowing up. And
Yeah, that's
you're just the opposite.
We don't have time for that. We used
Well,
to.
where did that image come from? Who started that stereotype?
They were a pampered group of people. And they look, the singer, a tenor especially, would look in the mirror and look and say, hey, God made me a tenor. And how can I breathe the same air as Joe Blow? And they carried a little oil spray. Jacob Pincus, who was a wonderful guy, and whom I knew, unfortunately died too young. He was one of those. In Europe, he was treated like a king.
Really?
He'd finish a performance in Vienna, and he'd be carried out into the street.
Which would tend to make a guy feel a little different,
Yes,
right?
now he'd stand up on a balcony in front of the opera house on the first floor, and thousands of people would be assembled. He just finished the performance, and he'd go out and sing for them and tell them how happy he is that they came to worship as a shrine. And all this business. Let me tell you about this business.
Yeah. The spraying.
The spraying.
Yeah.
If you're in good voice and you're feeling good, you don't need a spray. And God forbid, when you're in bad voice, the spray won't help you.
Yeah.
The best spray, you get up in the morning, you gargle with a little salt water just to clear things up, and you're fine. And as I said, and also practicing singing scales. If you're in good voice, you need 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But if you're not in good voice, the longer you practice, the longer you sing scales, the worse it may get.
Really? Wow.
So that's my philosophy, and I've done pretty well on that rule.
Have you ever lost your voice? In a critical moment, you're ready to go on or something?
No. Thank God, no.
Yeah.
I've had laryngitis.
Sure. Yeah.
I had a time, I tell it in my book, I had a time that I didn't know that I was singing badly until my wife called it to my attention. Everybody was slapping me on the back and telling me what a great guy I was. Oh, your performance tonight was marvelous. And I never drove a car because my eyes used to be bad. Now I have 20/20 vision.
Really?
Yeah. And that's a miracle. You'll read that in the book if you get to it. It's a miracle, the kind of operation I had. And she'd drive the car and she'd say, you know, Jan, I hate to bring it up, but you didn't do so good tonight. What are you talking about? People were crowding into my dressing room. You were there, yelling, you're great, you're marvelous, you're fabulous. You don't like it. We get into terrible hassles about it. Never realizing it, that the death of my mother had such effect upon me.
Really?
But subconsciously. And I suffered. And I did something about it. She forced me to do something about it. I had a friend of mine, I don't know if you know the name of Robert Reedy, great
Yes, I know.
baritone.
Yeah.
He was a buddy of mine. He was a wonderful teacher. And another friend of mine, Alexander Lorber. And between these two, you can't go around telling people, hey, I'm not singing well. You confess to yourself and to your family.
Right.
So I said, fellas, I'm not doing well. I need your help. And we all thought the same way. And with the help of God, we were straightened out.
Well, what were you doing wrong? What were you just...
The voice wasn't projecting.
Yeah.
My breath wasn't functioning. Breath is very important. Your control, your diaphragm. It was just, when you get emotionally upset, your whole system drops. And probably subconsciously, I didn't even care.
Yeah.
But I had my wife to call it to my attention, and I was...
Well, it's very easy when you get in your position to take all the accolades and the patting on the back too seriously, isn't it?
It all depends what your mentality is. We ourselves know, if you're truthful to yourself, we ourselves know when we're doing well and we're not doing so well. Yeah. Especially after a lifetime of doing the thing.
Right.
And when I talk about my voice being in trouble, that's 1945. That's 30 years ago, 31 years ago. God forbid today I wouldn't have to have my wife tell me.
Yeah.
understand?
Right.
But you have to develop a certain technique, which is your best friend. Without technique, just making a sound and making a noise is not enough. Or singing a high B flat and trying to thrill the people with the power of a voice. There's something else that goes in with the voice besides power.
Right.
Sweetness, musicality, phrasing.
If you had to do all over again, would you be a singer?
Oh, yes, without a question of a doubt.
Not be a doctor or a lawyer or...
Oh, the only reason I probably would have liked to have been a doctor is of the good that a good doctor can do to people. But as far as my mental approach and happiness and satisfaction, what else is better than, first of all, it's a great outlet for the individual.
Yes.
Second of all, where else can you walk out on a stage with 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people in front of you, and at the given moment when the pianist puts his hand near the piano, there's a hush, and you feel that hush, and all they're waiting for is that moment that you emit the first sound.
That must be a tremendously exciting
It's a
moment.
thrill. It's great. And then, if you sang well, if you pleased them, you brought a little happiness to them. And if you can make a person forget for an hour or two some of their pressing troubles and things that are ailing, things that are bothering them, you're doing a great deed.
Indeed you are. Well, we thank you for being with us. The book, The Bluebird of Happiness, is a fascinating book filled with anecdotes and warm human stories of an honest man who tells it like it was, and we thank you for being with us, Jan Peerce.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be right back.